Hello and welcome to session 1 of 5 for Mage Powered by the Dark. So this is a Powered by the Apocalypse hack for Mage the Ascension, the sort of original World of Darkness Mage game. And this is written by Holden Shearer, who did this a few years ago, did this and did an adaptation for Mage Sorcerer's Crusade. These are out there free. They are, I won't say like really modern tech in terms of PbtA, but I'm really curious to try out how it works. Tyler and Patrick have both said how much they think it grabs onto the flavor of Mage, which I think is good. And we're going to be kind of learning that today as we go along. My name is Lowell. Pronouns are he, him. And this session is part of the Gauntlet Hangouts. The Gauntlet itself is an online gaming club, gaming community, where we have a calendar of games. This is supported by a Patreon. We have a free gaming event we're now doing quarterly that's online. That's coming up July 6th for registration, and it's going to run the 16th through the 19th that weekend. You can find out about all of this at gauntlet-rpg.com. So normally I would kind of roll into CATS, which is about concept, aims, tone, and so on. But this is a game that is kind of open-ended. So I'm going to give just the very basic pitch for anyone who's at home. And then I want to talk about safety, and then we're going to stop and talk about what people might want out of the game. So Mage the Ascension is a game of characters in a modern setting, generally, who have developed magical techniques, magical powers, which are unlike conventional magic in that they're really about reality warping and about one's paradigm and imposing one's vision and paradigm on the world. But the world pushes back against that. So when you do things that are obvious, you can generate backlash, you can generate paradox. And this is a world with conflicting groups, and then within sort of the organizations, and we've got this technocracy, this sort of villainous group that's operating out there. We're going to make up our characters today and talk about what kind of game we might want to play. I've got some premise that I've set up for the characters, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But that's just the general thing. This is very open-ended. I was like, how do I prepare for this session? I was like, I think I'll just reread the rules and I'll write down some questions. That's going to be my prep for this. Given that, we're going to have that tone conversation here in a second. That's sort of the good starting point for what we're doing. But we've got some other safety tools that we bring to bear on this. The first of these is lines and veils. And you will see that in the character keeper, there is a tab with lines and veils. And it has checklists. Line is, of course, anything that we don't want to see at the table, just not something we want to engage with. Veil is anything that, should they pop up, we're going to elide or fade to black when those things occur. This is not a complete list, so if there's some things that you want to add, feel free to add it at the bottom. And throughout the character creation process, people can go over there and look and add things to it. And then before we actually get to playing, I'll go back through that. That's number one. Number two is that we have the X card to support that. Essentially anything that we don't catch with lines and veils, or if we miss something and we bring up one of these things, X card is used to mark that there's material that we find objectionable, problematic, wildly off tone, any of those things. And you can do that with a verbal X card. You can message in the chat. You can do this safety gesture if you want your reaction to be quick. X card is important. We don't ask for any kind of justification for that. We don't want an explanation. We don't need that. If you X card something, we may ask where the cut point is, but that's it. That is your decision. The final thing we have is open table, or rather open door, rather, is what I really want to say. Especially games which might, this is a World of Darkness game, depending on how we want to frame it, there might be elements of horror or things like that, and it is a modern game which can touch on some difficult things. If you need to step away, just step away. And you can take a break and come back. Maybe give us a message that you'll be back or not be back. But there's no need to justify those choices. The plan is for us to kind of do the character creation process, walk through this together, do some building, take a break, and then go through. Yeah, I don't know. What does the raise hand button do on this? I don't even know where that is. What does that look like when somebody does that? So you got a little raise hand, lower hand. Yeah, so we'll say if you do a raise hand, we'll also read that as an X card on that, and that may actually be a little more noticeable for me.
Where's the raise hand button?
I think it's. Let's see here. Where is the raise hand?
So
David?
I pressed the I think the chat button brought up like a panel to the side, which has like a
Send to the chat
kind of like right above it was the raise hand, invite, and mute. Oh wait, maybe it was the participants button is what I pressed. Looks like it's under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at all this fancy tech we have.
Wow.
I'll say I don't see anybody's hand raised.
There should be like a little blue box in the upper left-hand corner. Do you not see that, Tyler?
I do not.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So let's stick. Let's just stick with standard gesture then for that, since that doesn't seem to go across all channels.
I'm able to see it. I had to click on the participants button in the bottom, which brought up a sidebar and lets me see everybody's name over there, who's muted and who's not. And then when a hand is raised, I can see it there. I don't know if that helps everybody or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought people were seeing it other places.
Yeah, it is. Like I can see your hand is up.
Where? Like on my video?
So what I see is on your video, I see it like up here. I see a little thing. Now, I wonder if that's because I'm the session manager.
I'm betting it is. Can anyone else see the raised hands on the video?
Okay.
So
it's just
I could see it. It looks like a little turkey, like a little turkey bird.
Oh, David can see it. Interesting.
So strange.
Yeah. But yeah, it's okay. I'm fine with making a noise or doing the X thing too.
Okay. So this is a mage game. One of the things I set up for the premise is that the idea that there has been a war amongst the supernatural forces, a devastating war that has happened in the recent past. It may have been a few years. It may be, just ending now. I want that as kind of thing that there's been a disruption in maybe the normal order of things. So that's the only thing I have in terms of premise. So I want to talk and go around and maybe get some of your thoughts and maybe expectations about what you'd like to see. I'm going to kind of work across here. So Tyler, I know you're a mage vet, a little bit familiar with the setting. So if we had to put a couple of words about what you think you want out of a mage game, scale or approach, so on.
Okay, I like the idea of the kind of Dreamweaver, what mages believe becomes reality. So I like big stuff out of mages.
Okay.
Personally, I like the big danger being now. I would ask, are you intending that we are part of the traditions? Are we open up to everything?
I'm gonna let you as a group decide that. I'm good doing a traditions restricted, but if people are like, I'd really like to try moving it out, we can open that up more.
I like all of the little extra-y things. I personally would rather we didn't go towards technocracy. It's not a hill I'm gonna die on, but I feel like having an us and them does add something. And then that gives the danger to the world being running afoul of technocracy, or if we decided we're all technocracy running afoul of the traditions.
Okay.
And paradox, that being the big problems, and the dealing with mortals as a general rule. The danger there is paradox more than that mortals are going to be able to overpower us. I always think it's sad for a mage to be, like beaten up by a thug.
Okay. So I like what you're saying about scale. Technocracy is the enemy. Some thoughts about that. David, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I played a lot of vampire like back in the day, but
Uh-huh.
I was always secretly like wishing I were playing mage, so I never actually got to play the original thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm really into like urban fantasy kind of stuff, and I've been playing catch up this last week or so, like going on YouTube and like listening to the things on lore and stuff. So I'm like, they're all about the tradition thing, so I don't know anything about any of the other ones. So hopefully we're
Okay.
sticking to that. And yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
No, it does. It does.
I'm excited in general.
I think again another kind of vote, kind of leaning into the traditions, conventional World of Darkness lore. I think that can work for us. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
I also like the sort of traditions versus the technocracy, the us and them that Tyler was talking about. Although I would not begrudge anyone if they wanted to play one of the traditions, or not traditions, but the like crafts of the lost houses and the things like that. As far as like neatness out of mage, I really enjoy like leaning into that personal paradigm idea, and how mages, as they grow more powerful, their paradigm, can start to affect the places that they live in, or they start to seek places where their paradigm can really take hold. So, you can walk through a doorway into a technocratic hold, and suddenly like the laws of reality and science are different, or you slip through a gateway into like a verbina's behind the real world forest, and like cell phones and things don't work. The how you can be in places where someone's strength belief is strong enough to override the normal rules of reality.
I like that. A very classic stuff. I've certainly that's what appeals to me about this setting. Jesse, thoughts that you have?
I don't think I have anything to add to what's already been said. I'm not overly familiar with the setting and the lore. I've done some reading and really enjoyed what I saw, but I got bogged down when I got into all the different factions and everything like that. But I do like the idea of the traditions versus technocracy. That was very interesting to me as I was reading things. But honestly, I'm ready to roll with the punches. So yeah, whatever works.
Here is what I'm going to say here. We're going to do a tradition-focused game, though. If you want to do the crafts, as long as we're not doing technocracy, we're going to do that kind of traditions and even those lost things. And we're going to be a group of people that know each other. We'll figure out exactly how you know each other, but you've been sent to a place to relight the torch, to refound a lost place in a city, and we'll come to what that exactly means. That's going to be sort of the general premise that I think we're going to work with. I think that'll fit with what we're doing. So let me ask you this: is everybody cool with? I mean, this doesn't. I don't hear a lot of talk about the horror side. Some people, object to the idea of Mage being a horror game or a supers game. So we will have maybe some fantastical horror in there, but we're not doing World of Darkness like full on horror. Does that seem okay with everyone?
That's cool.
Okay. I see Tyler like there.
You know I love my horror.
I know you do, but we're not going to have like Nefandi horrificness in there.
And I don't mind like weirdness and grotesquerie, but yeah, I don't need to do a Nefandi story. I'll agree with that statement there.
Well, let's come around and talk just before we kind of even go to character creation, just so we kind of know from everyone what you're generally imagining. It's okay that people would be from the same tradition, though with PbtA, because the playbooks aren't really the traditions, they're more in the spheres. But it's also more fun if we have a lot of different traditions or backgrounds that people come from. So, Tyler, you've actually got a picture here. So let's start with you. Tell us what you're kind of imagining for your character, just in terms of what kind of tradition they might come from, or what kind of character they might be.
Yeah, I held off from being definite on anything so I could, let everybody get an opportunity to sound in. I like the idea of playing a Euthanatos tradition, but I can fit my guy into a couple of traditions.
Okay.
I'm thinking of a Fate Spinner luck guy, plays with chaos, and probably going to take, having entropy as his primary sphere, and looking at things like life and either time or correspondence being somewhere.
And we'll definitely have overlap on the spheres, but you're leaning towards Euthanatos. That's the only tradition I heard you mention there. So
I can look at. I thought about also cult. I could always do a cultist and fit that as well.
Okay, well let's go through. David, have you looked and have you thought about what you might want to do in terms of what your character's framework is?
Yeah, I sort of have like the seed of an idea so far. I was thinking like a verbena, like the real witchy kind of mages.
Mm-hmm.
Being like a blood mage, kind of like we just said, maybe lean off the horror, but I'm thinking like a real like horror movie kind of witch type thing, but like I'm thinking like a drag queen kind of guy. So like almost the inverse of what you might think possibly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I love all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's great. And kind of playing with the concepts of gender in that always is interesting. Verbena plays with the fluidity of that at times. Okay.
Yeah.
I dig that.
Oh, and then for spheres, I was thinking. I think we had similar favorites. I think for Tyler and I, but I was thinking. I mean, life I think is Verbena's main thing, and then entropy looked really cool, but also time looked really cool too. But yeah, probably focusing on life.
Okay. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
So I have sort of a rough idea of like a paradigm that's time based, centered around like working the world in time towards an eventual perfected form sort of thing. I think most easily see it as cultist, but it could also go verbena. I could see dream speaker as well.
Okay.
Just because to be unimaginative. I was definitely thinking time is a strong, entropy is a possible, mind is a possible, prime and correspondence. I don't know. I'll figure out what it is.
Yeah, you would like all the spheres. Okay. Jesse, what are your thoughts? Have you kind of thought about what kind of character you'd like to play?
Yeah, so I mean, I have less background knowledge on a lot of the different spheres and organizations, but my in kind of looking through it, I enjoyed the idea of more of a almost a mechanistic paradigm on music, but more on vibration being the underpinning of energy and matter in the universe, and I'm kind of almost imagining a potentially a musician who tapped into it from that angle, not necessarily using an instrument or anything like that, but having that kind of reverence for vibration and motion at a subtle level. Of the spheres, I mean, I was definitely looking and interested in potentially mind. Matter would also make a ton of sense for that kind of concept, I think. Life also. So I'm kind of flexible on that. I'm still trying to piece together where to go from it. And honestly, if anyone has ideas, any of you that have more knowledge on, kind of the base assumptions of the lore and the setting, if anything that kind of goes along with what I'm saying, always feel free to chime in. I'm very open to ideas. So I don't want to hold anyone back here with my lack of knowledge.
So certainly, where we're talking about vibrations and things like that, I can imagine that being the Order of Hermes. They deal in forces. They're also, in terms of mechanistic and changing the world, there's the Sons of Ether, who work often with devices, or even the virtual adepts, who are about imagining the way the world is. So all of those are cool.
The choir.
Oh, the Celestial Chorus, which and so there's a bunch of cool stuff in there.
Okay. I'll start peeking at those.
So I've put a little tab, and I'm going to rename it here. And this is another one. I'm going to apologize for all the tabs in this. Character Keeper, but I'm actually going to move this to the front, and it is the walkthrough list for character creation. And it has the steps. In the actual PDF, this is the material that's on page 26 of the PDF, if you're looking at that. I'm going to let you go ahead and work through this. Essentially, it's making up a concept for your character, like a little epithet to kind of describe them, coming with the name, giving us a little description, rating your attributes, selecting your tradition. Your tradition will determine what your affinity sphere is, which is the one that you get better stuff at the start. And then there's going to be some picks about paradigm, practice tools that are in the description of that particular tradition in that PDF that is in that folder. You're going to select a couple backgrounds. That's all that stuff is also in that PDF. And then you're going to pick some sphere moves, at least one of which has to be from your affinity sphere. The one thing I have copied over besides like the moves is I've copied all the sphere moves there on a tab in the Keeper. Everything else is in those PDFs. So I'm going to apologize that you probably will have to refer back to that throughout this character creation process. So I'm going to let you get to work on that. And if you have questions about what something might mean, go ahead and ask. I'm going to check in again with you in about 10 minutes and see where everyone's at. That doesn't mean you have to be done in 10 minutes. It means I'm going to check in and see where we're at in 10 minutes. So we can get to the point where maybe we can start to introduce characters and describe things. Does that seem cool with everyone? Okay, I'm going to let you go.
That works.
I'm going to stop talking then.
Hey, Lowell.
Yes.
Hey, could you? I'm sure this is in the book too, but could you quickly go over the four stats, like what they're about?
Oh, sure. So we've actually got on the basic moves tab. I've got the moves there broken up by what dynamic, primordial, pattern, and questing.
Oh yeah, that's super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should tell you what those work with.
Oops. Thank you.
I have a quick question about practice, the practice section on the character keeper.
Yeah.
Looking at some of the other sections on there, like paradigm and whatnot, it's oftentimes there's an option, or choose something else. The practice seems pretty set in stone from what I'm seeing, and like the options in there, and I'm just trying to see, understand them a little bit more, what that is really getting at.
It is still fiction. They don't have a mechanical effect. So I think even though it doesn't say or pick something else, I think you should feel free to come up with it. Essentially, paradigm is how you see the world. Practice is sort of what your magic looks like when you're doing it in some ways, what the form is for doing it. And then tools are the ritual objects or things that you need to carry that out.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to come up with something else, like playing music or whatever, as a thing as part of the practice, you could certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
And don't feel like you have to pick all your sphere moves today. We can certainly, you can make those picks on the fly. We've got about another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to start having people make introductions. I will be right back. All right. Tyler, are you ready for me to start asking you prelude questions? Start asking you about your character?
I think so.
Let's have you give us the tell us who you are, what you've got, and I'm gonna follow up with some questions.
Alrighty. I'm Tyler, he, him pronouns, and I'm playing Dr. Malachi Rogers, who happens to be my local weatherman, whose name I love so much. And he also uses he, him pronouns, and he is a Euthanatos. His affinity sphere is entropy, and his paradigm is order from chaos. His practice is reality hacking, and he has a lot of tools, cards and dice, drugs and poisons, tricks and illusions, all sorts of lovely things.
Is there one of those tools that you're like, okay, this is the signature tool for Malachi?
I think probably cards and dice
Okay.
are really that signature. I think if you got him to where he thinks his greatest power lies, it may be Crossroads and Crossing Days.
Oh, interesting.
I just think that's a neat tool, Crossroads and Crossing Days. I think it's neat. He was born into an old money family from New England and has always seemed to have that lucky horseshoe up his finely chiseled posterior there. But he has a dynamic +1, 0 in pattern, 0 in primordial, and -1 in questing. His background he has arcane or cloaking. You are occluded, interesting word, from notice by the world at large. Footage, evidence, records of you tend to just slip through the cracks. It's easy for you to slip off the grid. Technocracy refers to this phenomenon as cloaking. I permanently have the condition arcane cloaked. I also have resources. I permanently have the condition wealthy, which cannot be removed save through major story events. And I took the spheres sense fate and fortune, which is an entropy one. You can sense the currents of destiny and the balance of probability. You can judge odds and likelihoods and predict the outcome of random events with significant but not perfect accuracy. I took control probability, which is entropy, and you can push the likelihood of things happening up and down in situations where chance is the most powerful actor, allowing you to influence the fall of dice and the order of cards, the winner of horse races, the path of landslides, and so forth. I have move, conjure, banish, which is a correspondence. You can create conjunctional effects to move or teleport small objects and organisms through space. And I have alter simple life, which is a life. You can cause changes in simple life forms such as mollusks, insects, bacteria, and plants, which like changing the leaves color or alterations to things like crabs or bugs, which I think is kind of nifty.
So
yes.
Let me ask you this. Is your arcane cloaking something that has always been on you, or is that something that you have done a great working that you've done or had someone else do for you?
I think that it is a byproduct of so much of me twisting luck. I don't think anyone did it to me, and I don't think I consciously did it. It's just that I screw around with probability and reality so much that I just sort of slip through people's fingers to be able to notice.
Now, how old were you when you first kind of had a sense of the magic?
I think that kind of that luckiness has been there as long as I can remember, but it's probably around puberty, that 12, 13-year-old age, that things started to bend more to my own will. Like things started happening because I was thinking about it. Yeah.
And how long after that did you kind of come into touch with the traditions or a mentor or even the technocracy? How long was it before that intruded on your life?
I'm thinking, and this may come to an insight later along, but I think that there may have been a magic streak in my family. And I think that pretty early on a family member, probably not my like father or mother, but like an uncle. And uncle in that very broad sense of that's what he's called, but no one really knows where he fits in the family, discovered that I could do this and started teaching me and took an interest.
Were they a Euthanatos, or did you find your way to that path later?
I don't think they were a Euthanatos.
Okay.
I think that it ended up just I found my way there probably because of inclination.
And how old are you now?
How do you feel about a little age twisting here? I've taken a little life and I have my
Sure.
entropy. I think I'm older than I look. I think I'm probably in my 40s and still pulling, I could be cast for 20, sort of thing. Keeping the pretty going on probably longer than makes sense.
What is your avatar like? I mean, everyone has an avatar, which is their inner magical essence, and it can, maybe they see it them, individually, or has a shape or a form. What do you imagine for you is going to be your avatar? If we see it on screen.
Right. My avatar is like Loki or Pan. It is always wanting to push their luck. It's always wanting to get me in a bit of trouble, so I have to get out of it. It's a pushing avatar. It wants me to grow and develop more and more and more.
If you're 40 and you're just still a starting mage, why aren't you more powerful than you are? I mean, you ought to be up there, but you're still just starting stuff. Did something happen? Did you get knocked back down the chain?
I think that my uncle wanted me to study very formally and in their tradition, which I'm thinking maybe like order, or order seems like makes sense to me. And that just wasn't working. And so right up into probably my 20s would be like my physical age or looking age is that point where I just realized this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
And I disappointed him by going out and being this dilettante and enjoying life. And it's through the enjoyment of life, going to Vegas and going to, all of these kind of hedonistic things, because I'm just filthy rich. And it was through that I began to gain my power. And so I've spent probably 15, 20 years just being a roustabout.
Did you avoid the war then? Were you part in whatever conflict went on? Did you keep your head down? Did you not hear about it?
I probably heard about it and would give, if someone came to me and, the tradition war is going, the technocracy is out there. I obviously try to avoid the technocracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do whatever I could to help them right then. And then I'd doodly-doo right on away, and people would be like, oh, what happened to him?
So in the aftermath of all of that, how do you feel about that? Lots of people that you knew as mages, with probably contacts and things like that, they're not around anymore. And you're kind of walking in the ruins of that war sometime later. I mean, do you feel this is an opportunity? Do you feel guilt? Are you uncertain about how you feel?
I think that's a nice character turning point. I think that now that we're here in the aftermath, I kind of realize what being a gadabout meant. I just took it for granted everything would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. And now it's important that I actually help. And, it probably says something about my character that when it's too late, I finally decided I need the help.
Excellent. All right, I think that gives us a good set of things to work from. David, can I come to you next?
Yeah, I've got a good amount going on here, I think.
Okay, sure. Tell us your name and give us a sense of who you are.
Okay, so I don't have a last name yet, but I'm pretty sold on Clayton being the first name at least.
Okay.
And so I think I'm glad that Tyler said this before, because I was thinking that sort of the same thing, like Clayton might have been in his like late 30s or early 40s when he was kind of awakened.
Mm-hmm.
And then has used his, affinity for life, the life sphere, to prolong his age for a little bit. But I think he was like maybe he had like a family. I think maybe like a recent family, like maybe he had even like a daughter of like 1 or 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had like his awakening when he went to like a drag performance and was like, oh no, I made a terrible mistake. I'm gay and also a wizard. This is 2 things to realize at the same time. And I think so I'm making him a little older so that his kind of estranged daughter could maybe come into this at some point too, as an adult, But anyway, let's see, what else do I have? Oh yeah, so he's a verbena kind of I think like he might have had like maybe his major like gay relationship was with someone who was verbena that could kind of like teach him and do this thing. And if there was maybe a big war, maybe that person was lost, and since he was awakened, kind of, oh, I'm not dealing with this war, I hate this, and then kind of figured out too late, oh, I could have really helped this person who really helped me a lot by joining this or doing anything, and I kind of wasted it. So now he's kind of trying to play catch up, perhaps.
Tell us about the tools and practice and what you've got as backgrounds.
Yeah. So I have these tools are so good. So I think I might have one extra. I might have to delete these because I just put all the ones that were great and then culled them from that. So don't count these because I might have more than I need.
Sure.
But so far, right now, currently, I have blessings and cursings, blood and body fluids, books, circles and designs, group rites, offerings and sacrifices, and sacred iconography. So I'm, like I was saying before, I think it's like witchcraft through like the real like blood magic and making the blood make patterns and things, like really gross, like earthy kind of witchcraft kind of things.
Chthonic. Yeah, okay. Would you say that the blood and bodily fluids, that's kind of the key to how you visualize, because it seems like a pathway to the other pieces, right?
Yeah, so a lot of absolutely, a lot of blood, and I think we're both thinking the same bodily fluids going on here, but also like sacrifices and stuff. So like like animals or anything that he's actually tied to sacrifice, maybe concepts and things like that too.
Okay. We do have harm for animals as a veil, so if we do something like that, we'll fade to black on that.
Oh yes, good point to bring up.
Yeah. And what did you take for your backgrounds?
So I have I'm not married to this first one, but so what I'm thinking, the first one I picked was influence, and I think just in I think he did become like, it probably took him years and years, but he became a drag queen as well. And I think he's going to have like almost like a performance persona as well. But so through kind of like this subset community, he has like a lot of fans and everything. And at least in that community or maybe in general, like he's got the influence, which is, kind of people he can depend on.
Yeah.
Through that
seems like a good way to handle that. And what's the other one?
And the other one I'm thinking, so I have a library. So I'm thinking that's why I kept books too. because I think he has a big bookstore that might be it's a lot of like queer fiction, but also like witch fiction, and like the overlap of those two, which is there's a huge Venn diagram of this sliver is great, and I think he kind of plays for that, and especially has this area for that, just not even mages in particular, but just youth that are trying to figure out more about I think I'm a witch and I think I might be queer and all of this stuff, and he's kind of like the shepherd of these new people.
So when you had that awakening, what was it? Something that you saw, or was it the gestalt of everything? What was that transition from the old life to the new life? What was key there?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. I think I think maybe before that he was very conservative, and like not necessarily like homophobic or anything, but just like,
right.
Oh, I'm not even thinking of that at all. That's not even part of anything I would even consider. Then when he let himself almost open up a little bit by going to this like drag show or something, he was like, wait, there's so much, not only this life, but like all these other kind of things like that I've been closing myself off to. And just the realization of that, I'm thinking, like if this were a TV show or a movie, they'd have like the cheesy, like Technicolor, all the things coming at him at the same time, like my whole world's opening up, like that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, I'm not as familiar with drag culture. Here I'm in the Midwest, so the drag queens that I've known have had a very strong split between their day selves and then their performative selves. But I also know that there are a lot of people who engage in drag, who are drag. I don't know what, I'm probably messing up the terminology here, that for them, that's the consistent presentation of themselves, and there isn't necessarily an alternative. How are you picturing that for Clayton?
Oh yeah, that's a really good point. So I know tons of drag queens, so I'm not like doing it out of just like, those are crazy people. No, I know a ton of them. You're absolutely right. He's like, I think through most of the game, like that we're actually playing, he's not going to be in drag. It's only during performances or anything that he'll actually, take on his other persona. I'm trying to figure out a clever, like, which drag queen name. If anyone has suggestions, please let me know. But yeah, I think it'll only usually like 90% of the time he'll probably just be like a regular, I don't know, not regular, but not in drag, male presenting kind of person. But I do think maybe how that possibly manifests, I'm thinking, and anyone can chime in on this if they have an idea too, but I'm thinking maybe like his avatar self is like separate from him, but just like the female like ideal, but like also with male parts. It's
an echo of a mirror in some ways, but that hermaphroditic, the alchemical ideal we've seen before of the fusion of man and woman.
Exactly.
That's very
and
cool.
His like drag persona is basically him trying to replicate his own avatar. It's like, oh, I've seen this person kind of talk to me, and I've seen visions of this person. I'm going to dress up like them, and I'm going to do my best to be that person too, is how I'm thinking of this person so far.
Oh, I like that. And this person who brought you in, who was your mentor, who has passed away, were they Verbena? Did they initiate you into those traditions, or did you find your way there a different path?
I think so. The very basic idea I have of this person is if you're familiar with gay culture, like almost like a real super mask, like a bear type, I guess. Like, oh, if you say one bad thing about a gay person, I'm gonna like kill you. Basically, I'm gonna beat you until you can't even realize it. Like the most, like, I can't believe how violent this person is. Like they're all business all the time, which is kind of, I'm thinking this character Clayton is kind of the contrast to that. He's like, whoa, you you really got to calm down. He's like, there's a war. We got to kill these people that are going against us. It's like, no, come on. It's all going to sort itself out. Don't even worry. And then when he kind of was proven to be right, this like war that happened, perhaps maybe like he was one of the, the sacrifices of this war. He's like, maybe I should, like I said before, I guess, like I should have taken this more seriously. He was probably onto something.
Very nice. I like that. That's a great set of ideas and images. I think that gives us some good stuff to think about. I'm going to go through and talk to other people. And for Tyler and David, when we come back around, there'll be insights that you're going to do. You're going to tell to the other PCs things that they know about you, an insight that they have about you. Before we get to that, though, let's go across the character sheet. That brings us to our Celestial Chorus. Jesse, tell us about your character. What is their name?
Yeah, so I have a first name so far, Thomas. I'll come up with a last name here sometime. Okay. So Thomas is a concert cellist. Wanted a string instrument to really tie into the vibratory kind of nature of his magic here. Let's see, I'm going to go down this. So Celestial Chorus is the tradition. Affinity Sphere Prime seemed to be a winner for what I'm going for. So just kind of the idea that there is just a tapestry or a raw material or a vibration in the background, something just something underpinning everything was kind of the idea there for me. As far as paradigm, I think I chose higher power, but I believe Thomas, at least at this point, believes that higher power is either unknown or unknowable, but that the song of creation can be heard and used. And that's kind of where he's coming from. As far as practice goes, I'm still mulling that over. I think there's a receptive and expressive portion to it, definitely listening, and I'm tying that into his concert cellist kind of background there, because the way I imagine it is that at a particular point in his development, as a musician, training his ears became the focus. You can have all the technical skill in the world, but unless you can hear the finest gradations between what's being played, I think that's where it started for him. And then I think he just started listening to everything, right? Because just listening to instruments is wonderful, but in order to train his ear, he just started listening to everything. I mean, going to the park, sitting down, hearing the birds chirping, hearing the wind passing through leaves in the trees, kids playing in the background, and kind of starting to hear, but not just hear, also just kind of feel the background unity of all those things. So that, and as far as tools and everything, I see that kind of going into, kind of tying in with the practice, of course, but I'm actually imagining, a cello is not the easiest thing to carry around. So I'm imagining that's actually not his primary tool when using magic. And I kind of am more imagining his, both his voice and then anything with which to create sound or vibration. So one of the ones I kind of latched onto, I've got a lot of things in the tools here, like energy, celestial alignment, eye contact, languages, music, writing and inscriptions, and voice. Languages and voice I really keyed in on. I'm imagining a combination of words and non-words. I don't think the words themselves matter, but it's the vibration. And I actually think an outsider would think he was speaking in tongues, but I don't think he sees it that way. That's the rhythm and the vibration that is appropriate for what he's trying to accomplish.
So what was his awakening to the magic? Was it at some point listening and picking up all of these fragments of the song of creation, starting to hear those pieces? Is that what brought that about for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I think so. I think he's an obsessive person, not much of a personal life, kind of the person that, like maybe parents threw him into music as a young child, but then he didn't need much more encouragement, just kind of absorbed into it. So yeah, I think it's just kind of that constant listening and starting to hear the patterns among everything, all the different things, all the different sounds he was hearing, all the things he wasn't hearing, and feeling and hearing the kind of coherence among that. So yeah, I think that's where it came from for him, was just listening at a level that he didn't know was possible, if that makes sense.
And what did you take for your backgrounds?
Backgrounds, so first one is fame. So it says, I permanently have the condition famous, which cannot be removed save through major story events. And I'm going to tell you that the level of fame that he has is very uncomfortable to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of came about after, really after his awakening, because he was trying to listen to everything in order to improve his own playing, and it definitely accomplished that. In addition to the awakening of magic and everything, I think I've heard it said, I'm not a musician. Please forgive me, anyone listening or anyone I'm playing with who is, and everything. But one of the biggest things I have heard at that level is that any of these people can technically play the same piece beautifully. The technical skill is there, but different musicians have some extra quality to what they are playing. You can have a person play the same instrument, same piece of music, just as technically well on that same instrument, but one person produces something a little extra in the sound, in whatever, in the energy, and so I think his fame has kind of come from that, if that makes sense. That was the mark of his rise from probably middle of the pack to someone who is standing out. Other background I chose was a sanctum or laboratory. It says I have a small private ritual space or research area attuned to my practices and paradigm. I think it's very simply just my own personal soundproofed practice room. I think the only, you're not getting outside sound in there, just whatever background sound of the song of creation that he can hear and whatever sound he produces. So I think that's his place. So those are the backgrounds I picked.
How long do you think you've been awakened to the magic?
I would say less than a year. I think it's kind of like that. I think that's one of the biggest reasons he's uncomfortable with the level of fame he's got, because it's new and because it's associated with this other thing that frankly scares him, yeah.
So I kind of imagine that then you came in and, some of the surviving mages of the Celestial Chorus found you, contacted you, but couldn't mentor you that much, just because everything had been so disrupted. So probably not as deeply connected to that tradition. Do you imagine yourself? I imagine if you have this kind of skill, do you imagine yourself as a like concert soloist, or do you imagine yourself as doing more solo performances or quartets or things like that, or all of it?
I think it's more like symphonic, but with the standouts in any position, will get some solos, and I think it's just been a promotion kind of first chair kind of deal, and so most of his work is in the context of a symphony, but with those moments of individual performance within that context.
What do they look like?
I have a picture, and I can't remember how to easily put it in here.
Insert,
I'm imagining,
and then drop down to image overcells is the easiest way.
Let's see. All right. So let's see. Anyway, I'll describe it and then I'll figure out that in a moment. Sure. But I'm imagining kind of a slight build, relatively tall, maybe around 6'1"-ish, a bit gangly, kind of dark, close cropped, almost curly hair. Doesn't ever, posture wise, doesn't ever look comfortable in his own skin except when he's playing. Yeah.
And the avatar is sort of your mental construction, your mental representation of that self. what do you imagine your avatar is like for you?
Okay, so are they? I guess this is where I have to ask a little questions before I go wild on it. Like,
Sure.
is
They
it
can be
usually human shaped?
abstractions, they could
Okay,
be humans, they could be spirit forms. You kind of define that avatar and
yeah.
what your interaction with it is.
Okay, yeah. So then my thought is that it looks like a thread stretching to infinity in like up, top to bottom, that
Mm-hmm.
then I can see and hear the vibrations as it communicates with me.
Oh, nice.
I think, yeah, I'm kind of imagining almost a black nothingness with me
Mm-hmm.
standing in the middle of it, not standing on anything, but this very fine string stretching again top to bottom towards infinity, but vibrations that color and vibratory changes in it is I think how it interacts with me, if that makes sense.
Neat. Yeah, I like that. That gives us some good stuff to work with. Patrick, let's have you tell us about your character.
Um, so, my character is Silas Turning.
A
He him.
name? You have a name?
I know, weird. We started you started getting into character introductions. I was like, oh crap! I need to hurry and find a name. That's obviously not the name he was born with, but I think he was definitely brought in a magely tradition that had importance about like keeping your true name out of public knowledge, keeping powers from being able to affect you that way. I went with Cult of Ecstasy and Affinity Sphere of Time. Paradigm has said sacred geometry can shape the world into perfected forms that will bring the eternal future into being. Just to be a little bit crazy about everything.
Okay.
But it's sort of this idea that time isn't an infinite thing. Time is more like a countdown. There is an end to time. There is a perfected eternal shape that the world will take. And part of the process of moving time forward, and part of his like view for paradigm and work in the world, is reaching forward to that perfected future and bringing forms of it into the present by like mirroring it physically in the world, or by bringing just like magical or sort of zeitgeisty parts of it into our reality, and
Oh,
then
interesting.
holding them there, making sure that they stay and that the next piece can be built on top of them. I think he was like he was in school. He was getting a master's in architecture. I think it was that that obsession of being able to like dream a form in his mind and then find the ways to make that a practical reality of like taking this weird twisted shape and making it a building that can stand up on its own. Very conceptual architecture sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was found by his mentor there in school, and sort of taught a higher form of design, a higher form of geometry and architecture. To practice, I went with Crazy Wisdom. Just very much leaning into the Cult of Ecstasy thing of like he will try any approach, he will try any method. It's all about twisting your perceptions and your view of the world out of the normal and
Mm-hmm.
into a space where you can be more perceptive and attuned to that perfect harmonic, that perfect future that he's looking for. And so he'll try any tool once, sort of thing. But for tools, I went with artwork, bodywork, drugs, fashion, ordeals and exertions, sacred symbology, and thought forms. I think the strongest there is like artwork in the form of design and sculpture and architecture and actually building physical structures in the world, and sacred symbology, forms and geometric shapes and angles that can affect the nature of reality around them. I think a lot of the other stuff are ways to get there, ways to get your mind into the right state. So ordeals and exertions would be along the lines of sort of long-term like stamina exertions, staying up for days at a time, exhausting the body like beyond the point where you think you can keep going. Drugs and body work in the form of like piercings and body modifications and tattoos that are again meant to like break your mind out of its normal thought processes and channel them down different paths. Fashion as sort of an external, sort of like the artwork, a representation, and I went with thought forms over meditation in the like, it's not quite
visualization and changing your ways of thinking.
Yeah, it's more of like an active twisting of thought processes rather than trying to find a perfect natural flow.
And how long have you been a mage?
I think 5 or 6 years. So he was like early mid-20s when he was found by his mentor. He was in grad school, and so I think he's coming up on 30 basically.
Had the war already started? Had the big war when you were found, or did it start after you were found and initiated?
I think it's one of those things that's hard to say. Like it hadn't broken into like outright reality warfare, but certainly the rumblings and the first shots and the sort of underpinnings of the conflict that was soon to come were definitely there, even when he was starting his training.
And what did you take for your backgrounds?
So for my backgrounds, I also took a sanctum or laboratory. I'm not quite sure what it is, visually speaking, but it's a place where he goes to be able to like work on forms and shapes that aren't 100% real or possible. And the other is contacts. You permanently have the condition, I know a guy, which cannot be removed save through major story events. And I think that's a lot of that's in the tradition-y Mage realm, in that he is just he's sought exercises and meditations and practices from all sorts of different traditions and masters, trying to find another thing to throw into his like junk drawer of magical techniques.
And what was your mentor like? Did you is the person who found you become your mentor, or was it later on that you found somebody that helped you? Were they dedicated? Were they just training you for a little while? What do you imagine?
I think it was the person that found me. I think they're still around. I think it was a good relationship.
Okay.
I don't think we're like family close, but I think we have a very healthy professional maging relationship, sort of thing.
Okay. And what about your avatar?
I think his avatar is a weird, impossible thing of angles and geometry, sort of constantly shifting shape and message. It's very much the sort of avatar that has to be like interpreted.
Okay.
It's something where he has to like spend time with the revelations that it's trying to show him before they can sink into his mind and change the way he thinks enough to incorporate them.
Awesome.
I think he sort of reflects that. The picture there has just a really cool like energy cat's cradle sort of thing going on there, and I think that's a really handy quick tool for him, is doing these sort of like strange patterns and shapes with string and cat's cradle sort of things, and a lot of it's like mimicking shapes that he's seen from his avatar in the strings.
And I think it gives us a good sense of who you are.
Spheres, I went with a bunch of time and a little bit of mind and correspondence for the like perception and the mental fortitude to try weird thought processes.
I like it. Let's take our break here. Let's take about 9 minutes or so, take our break. When we come back, we'll do those insights, kind of get those connections, and then we'll kind of frame up and start to set up where we're at, and we'll go over our lines and veils. Okay? Okay. Resume the recording. So what we're going to do is talk about insights. Now, the insights are things you've realized about other characters. They're things you've realized about groups. And you can spend insights. And you tell us how you're taking advantage of your insight. And the mechanical effect is you can add a +1 to a roll, subtract 1, force NPCs to falter, force NPCs to act at disadvantage, which I'm guessing means that in fiction they act at disadvantage because I'm not rolling for an NPC in this game. Add harm, all of those kinds of things. So it does have a mechanical weight to it. And interestingly, it has you define 2 things, for one for each of the other 2 other PCs that they know about you. So you tell them what they would have realized about you, and this should help us kind of define some things. We go into the assumption that you 4 have met each other over the last 6 or 7 months. Maybe you've worked together or trained together. We'll talk about how you're going to be called on in a little bit. But Dr. Malachi, I want you to give us an insight and say who would know that about you.
I'd also like to ask a real quick setting question before
Yeah.
we get going. The war.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, this is the technocratic war.
People don't remember what the war was.
Okay, so that's where we're going with. Okay.
They're bits and pieces. People know things happened. It's thought that it was the war between the technocracy and the mages and so on. And people know bits and pieces, but when they go to try to put it all together, it slips out of people's fingers.
Okay. And
we're still recovering what happened.
Are we in detente or are we hiding from the technocracy?
That we know that the technocracy is still out there. The technocracy is active. They are clearly operating as well from this, like they don't know either. So as much as anything, it's that both sides have been devastated, but the technocracy still has their agenda, which is reasserting control and dealing
Putting
with
us
this,
down.
especially because, I mean, their thing is that there was a war. We can't remember it. This is the fault of the traditions. We absolutely have to stamp them out so that this doesn't happen again.
Nice. Okay, that's cool. Love it, Lowell. That's really neat. All right. So I would ask of you 3, do any of you feel like you're knowledgeable of like mage politics, or you have a broader view of mage stuff? Am I getting no from everybody?
You know, like our characters, right?
Right, your characters, yeah.
Right. If no one else is volunteering, maybe my character would have like a passing understanding of it. Like, oh, I just kept hearing this and I just wrote it off until recently.
Okay. So an insight is that I come from a very old mage family, as in my family has been mages for a very long time. They've been Order of Hermes, and you may have heard this name of what house we were a part of back in the day.
So the simple way to say it would be like Dr. Malachi comes from an ancient lineage of mages.
And we were part of House Tremere.
Tremere, okay. You're going to go all Ars Magica on us.
Or a little vampire.
Yeah, well, there is that. And then, so Clayton, you'll record that on your sheet. Tyler, let's have you generate another insight and give that to someone else.
Okay. Who would like to have dealt with me a little when the war was going on? Who would like to have a little history with me in the midst of battle?
How long ago are we saying this was, the war?
Within the last few years.
So probably not Thomas. So I think that it has to be
Silas. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of different people.
All right. You'll note I have a scar. You know that I received that attack from a hit mark. And no matter what I do, I can't get rid of that scar. And I'm a little afraid it means they can find me.
Nice.
So I'm going to put Malachi's been scarred by the hit marks.
There we go.
Nice. So David, let's come to you and do the same sort of thing to give others insight. And we have a beautiful picture of your character now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it? Are we thinking this is more of like? Are we just making this up, or is it from a list or something?
Yeah. No. Essentially, it's what they would have learned about you. Like I mean, it can be, you know, about your habits. It can be about your history. It's just a way to kind of build up a little connection and say what people would pick up about you.
Okay. Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is it's really interesting to me that this like a strange daughter might be like also like maybe a mage or something, or about to become a mage. So maybe someone might know her or know of her at least.
Okay.
I think she has like a lot of reason to not like him, especially because she's probably older than him now at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because he probably started off as like late 30s, but he's with life. It's like, no, I'm getting younger and younger every year. Don't worry about it.
So we'll put that sort of as, you know, I know Clayton's daughter would be the simple way to put that. Who do you think would know your daughter, Clayton?
Let's see. Well, the thing that jumps to mind is the let's see, Thomas, like the performer. She might be like a fan or something, but really, I could see any of them really having a connection, possibly.
Well, let's go with Thomas. Let's start with that, since that was your first instinct. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I'm interested in that. I guess, I mean, yeah. Do you want to define how it is she knows? I know you kind of mentioned potentially a fan, or is it? Yeah, I mean, it could be another musician, could be someone I know from my small social circle, which, you know, I'm relatively reclusive, but you know, could be someone I know there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No,
You
I'll leave it
mentioned
completely
that
up to you if you want. Yeah.
you mentioned that she's starting to become a mage. That
Yeah.
you think you imagine that. So maybe
That
given
would be interesting,
how
for sure.
new Thomas is, he may have kind of passed her in this process of others bringing her up. Does that seem okay?
Yeah, that sounds great to me. That sounds cool.
Cool.
And the respondent is writing down the
Yep,
insight,
yeah.
right? Not the asker.
That is correct. The respondent will write down that insight. So Thomas, you'll record that.
Okay.
So last name is Paulson. What's her first name, David?
Yeah.
Great question. Yeah, I'll have to look at some name charts unless you have something.
No.
What comes to mind? Of course, whenever I'm like, every name easy, I can come up with anything, and I'm like, wait,
Right.
so many. Who knows?
Hardest part of role playing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Jesse, if you have anything interesting, let me know.
Okay.
But I might look at I might bring up a generator real fast.
Sure.
Yeah. Nothing's jumping out to me.
I
Joy.
ran
Let's make it joy.
joy.
Easy.
Okay, good.
Very thematic. Sure.
What
I
did you
ran
say it was? Joy?
Yeah, let's go with that. Unless anything
Like it.
else jumps to mind.
I like that.
We ran a 13 session mass campaign on the Gauntlet where the players never decided on their team name. Every session we would stop and we would have this discussion, and they would just call it the team, and that's how it got recorded in the wiki. So David, what's another insight that someone else would have about you?
Okay, yeah, this one's harder. I'm trying to think of other things that could be I mean, putting on you, this is really my fault, but like
Sure.
what would be a good other like insight to have on somebody?
I like, one of the things you mentioned earlier is this idea of your role as a mentor to youths who are transitioning between states of their life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really interesting fact about you that would tell others something about who you are, and maybe one of the others has seen you engage in that.
Oh yeah, okay. I like that a lot. Yeah. Like almost like has a soft spot for like the youth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point.
Who do you think that would be? Would that seem more like a Silas would know that, or a Dr. Malachi?
Let's see, any volunteers? I feel like
Can we repeat it again?
How do you want to phrase that, David?
Yeah. So I think so Clayton kind of has like a bookstore library that has, of course, like a secret basement or something with magical text, but mostly it's for like the Wicca kind of stuff, and also like queer literature to like either people transitioning, like Lowell said it really well, like transitioning to, oh, I'm becoming a pagan now, or a Wicca, and also, oh, these other group, or maybe the same group, I'm not exactly straight now, and he's kind of fostering all of them. So maybe someone who knows of his I don't know, leanings toward that, or his maybe role.
I could see that being me, in that kind of someone who stumbles across things very easily. I part of that fate twistiness is I discover stuff almost inadvertently. And also, I think that Malachi, I'm building up on, he is someone who does not consider form to be a limitation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that works as, a connection between us of, he views the physical form as something that is completely mutable, and it should be what you want to be.
Yeah.
So you record, Tyler. You record. I know about Clayton shepherding these young people between life states.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's cool. And I added that Malachi's thing to mine too, right? Like the respondent.
You should. The only person who should be writing it down is the person who knows the inside about it.
Perfect. Gotcha.
So Jesse, let's come to you. What's an inside about Thomas, and who will know it?
Okay. First, I have to ask a question about lines and veils.
Sure.
Are we okay with some themes of addiction and substance abuse? I'm okay if we want to go no on that. That's totally fine.
That's we don't see any marks
Fine.
on that. So if you want to go ahead.
So I think that Thomas was in a car accident, maybe even still walks with just a little bit of hint of a limp or something like that. And I think prescription painkillers have become an escape for him. He's so tuned into what he considers the song of creation that he's found difficulty in tuning it out. And
Okay.
I think as he was recovering from that injury, he discovered a chemical way to accomplish that. And I don't know who thinks they might have come across that information in one way or the other. I could see it coming out in multiple ways.
I think Silas has probably realized that.
Okay.
He does a lot of drugs himself. And has tried a lot of different things, but he can recognize a crutch from a tool.
Sure, that makes total sense. I like that. Okay.
And then one more insight.
Yeah, I've been trying to think of another. I think I'm going to go to potentially some the gist of family relationships. So I as I kind of mentioned, I think Thomas is the kind of person that becomes so absorbed in his work, right? I mean, music is his life to a degree that is probably unhealthy. The kind of person that forgets family members' birthdays and, just doesn't show up to things that he's agreed to, not necessarily because, out of malice or anything like that, just doesn't think of it, just isn't in his mind. So I think there's a very strained relationship with parents. I think that they are constantly trying to reach out to Thomas, and he's just not quite sure how to make that connection. So I think some very strained family relationships due to his inattentiveness and obsession would be another part of that. It feels like kind of almost part of the same personality issues as the addiction, if that makes sense. Just kind of another face of that.
So who do you think knows about your strained family relationships?
Well, I think I'm interested in, let's see, double check here.
I like that. Actually, let me make a suggestion that it might be Dr. Malachi, because Malachi already has this emphasis on family lines. There's a nice parallel there.
I think that's really great.
My GM design for symmetry makes me push that way.
Yeah. Does that sound good to you, Tyler?
Yeah, it sounds excellent. So give me a sentence pitch.
Let's see. Trying to figure out how to boil that down. Let's see. Strained family relationships that are incredibly one-sided, and if that makes and I can give you names if you'd like them at any point.
Nice. Silas, What 2 insights will they know about you?
I think one of them is that Silas is very prone to analysis, over-analysis, compulsive analysis of like studying, measuring, approaching a problem from different angles, and often like needs to be pushed into actual action on something. Sort of like it's beyond the like measure twice, cut once. It's just like measure 10 times, cut once.
So how do you want to phrase that?
I mean, does it fall all the way to OCD-ness, or is it just
No,
caught
it's
in
just
loop in your head?
Yeah, he just gets into like over designing things.
Like Silas can't make anything simple. Silas don't expect Silas to act quickly. How do you want to? What do you think they know about that? Or is it literally that they know Silas always measures 10 cuts once?
I mean, I think that would work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see, unless other people have an idea, I think my sort of chaos jumpiness wants to push you. I think I'm a very, we gotta go, it's gotta move. Come on, it'll work out. It's, screw it sort of idea. So I could see me having noticed it and trying to push. But if someone else has a good idea on it, feel free. No? All right.
Okay. And then what is the other insight?
I think it has to do with his methods, a lot of which involve like extreme stress or pushing his body past its normal limitations, in like exertion, exhaustion. Doesn't quite go totally wildly overboard with drugs like a lot of cultists may.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's that realization that like his methods are too extreme, that they are harming him in the long term. I sort of think like Clayton with his life magic and sort of work to keep himself static might have recognized that.
I was just about to volunteer for this because I feel like, yeah, for sure he might, especially as like, Clayton is, a familiar face in maybe a lot of club scenes. He's like, I know what this is about. No, you calm down a little bit. Come on, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like Silas's body can't keep up with where he's pushing it to.
Yeah, like that.
Awesome.
Oh, how would you phrase that?
Yeah.
Like that?
Like what I said.
Yeah.
Go to the tape.
Yeah, what was it? Silas's body is pushing it.
Silas's body can't keep up with where he's pushing it to.
So I am.
Cool. Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So all of you have been part of what's the fragmented left of your orders and chantries and things like that. Your East Coast, all of you moving around, probably off of the hub that is Boston, for the purposes of this big city, strong concert, scene. Boston Symphony Orchestra. There's a Boston Opera. Lots of the colleges there have their own orchestras, so that makes sense. An old place, family lines, but also deep culture in these places. It is an old town, but it's also a built up town. So there are certainly hubs of technocratic activity there, which has meant that your particular groups and cabals have had to operate quietly. I would say since the war, there's maybe more communication between the traditions, just out of a kind of a desperation to pull the pieces together, which is probably why you have worked together before. I imagine that jobs have been like, go and survey this area, make sure there isn't a technocracy thing here, or pick up and deliver something, or go and get this person out of this situation before they're grabbed by the technocracy. Those have been the kinds of things that you have done. Some of you, out of maybe a sense of a little bit of guilt about what has gone on in the war, that people still don't quite remember. Others because it is a way of training who you are. And you are called together. We're going to kind of hard frame this. I want to do the setup, and then we're going to kind of move to the setting. You are called together by a couple of people from the senior ranks, particularly of the Cult of Ecstasy and the Verbena. A couple of those masters call you in, and they have said, we have a task that the castings have told us needs to tie your threads together. Just about an hour north of Boston, outside of the suburbs, there is a city on the coast called Madding. It's within commuter distance for people from Boston, but it also, as with a lot of these places, has its own sense of identity and isolation. It's not that far off from Salem. As you know, we lost a lot of things in the war. More than anything, what has been wiped out is knowledge. Not just knowledge about the war and what happened, but knowledge about places, about resources, about what structures and things we had before. A place has appeared in Madding, and it is not registered as unusual with the local populace that this place has appeared. And we have an address, we have a location, and all we know is that the locals refer to it as the Crucible.
But you don't know what sort of place it is?
That's correct.
Hmm.
We're sending you 4 to Madding. We want you to figure out what this place is. We want you to secure it. We already know that it's likely that there will be others looking for it. Maybe not technocracy, but there may be other leftovers that may be looking into this.
What tipped you off to it? I mean, a place is just a place. Why isn't it just a new club called the Crucible that opened up in a city down the road?
It's clear that there's this look back and forth. We had sent a couple of our people into Madding because we had indications that a new mage was awakening. and they made contact, but sometimes people, when they awake, as you know, they don't take it well. And that particular encounter did not go well. And this person moved, and one of the two mages pursued into this new place and vanished. The other mage cut the losses, waited, hadn't seen this place before, knew that the city itself had shifted to open up and let this place be. And he came back and reported it to us.
And how will we recognize your new place? One can only presume if he saw him disappear into it, that it, he could describe it.
You would think so. You're going to have to put eyes on the ground there. That's why we're asking for you four to go. I know that some of you have businesses and facilities here. We have made arrangements to shift your businesses and things into the area so that you can draw on those resources. We've spoken to a virtual adept with some correspondence who is working to engineer that. So I hope that will be all right.
All right. Well, it sounds like we have everything in hand. I'll look around to the other three. Road trip?
Yeah, I think Clay or Clayton is just like lounging back like this picture, you know. He's like, listen, I'm all for helping, and I'm here for this. I'm so here for helping. Anything you need, but I did my best to avoid this mage war, and I, at the time, burned my draft card when there was a human war. And listen, if there's going to be some danger and I'm going to have to fight some people, I am just so not into it. Are we in danger going into here? Because I would love to give you a big veto. Is that going to be the case, or are we going to be a little safe? What do you think?
The Verbena turns to you and says, we know your attitude. We're well acquainted with this.
He makes like a exaggerate, like, oh my God face.
We don't know what this is. We need to find out. We don't know if it's a danger. We don't know if it's a resource. We don't know. And so we're asking you to look into it. Now, if you wish, at the first blush of a threat, you may scurry back here to Boston.
Scurry. Oh.
Or
Scurry, no.
Uber. Either way, I'm fine.
Just think
No,
about it. There's a new place growing in a place. Like, matting is having another matting grow out of the middle of it.
Oh no, it's all quite fascinating. I love it, and I'm absolutely going to go there. But I mean, with my attitude and everything, I guess I'll have to really try to rein myself in. Apparently.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not one for blushing. I can't wait.
Thomas?
I think Thomas has been kind of just sitting back and kind of listening, almost seeming kind of disinterested. But I think at this point might lean a little bit forward and just say something like, "Well, I'll keep my ears peeled. I have to imagine that if this place is new, but part of the whole, there's been some change in the tapestry of the vibrations, the song of creation in the area. I don't know. I'll do what I can, and I promise, Clayton, if I hear anything dangerous, I'll speak up.
Well, I appreciate it.
Let's do the kind of hard wipe. There's the montage of the car along the highway, with the sort of suspenseful music as you travel along the coast there.
I would have arranged for a limo.
Oh, okay. So it's a very nice, a very overwrought, a somewhat ostentatious trip here. Um, uh, uh, Thomas, what's your take on Malachi's immediately going to the limo as the best transit option?
I would say my immediate reaction is kind of comfortable discomfort. I think I might be used to it, but I think it's still that level of ostentatiousness that I'm not comfortable with. I'm okay. I think I probably insist on curating the music for the trip, but other than that, yeah.
And I assume a driver then, Malachi? Okay. So you will head up and it will go through, the northern suburbs of Boston, the wealthy areas that come closer to the coast, through those kind of small communities that are between the big city and these white flight suburbs outside of the city, and then but still old places out here, until you reach Madding. It's a city of maybe 100,000, and it draws from inland Massachusetts, and it draws from Boston. Here it's a weird mix of bedroom transit communities and some light, very, very light manufacturing, transport industrial, that kind of, here's where we have, one of those Amazon hubs and that kind of thing. And you will arrive in the city. Tell me, Tyler, what is the city's like symbol? What is its like marker or flag, or mascot that you see as you're coming into Madding? I may have asked time for that one. Nope, there we
go. Oops, sorry. I think, let's see, you say it's near Salem, and it's got this pull from around. I think as we come in, they have like the welcome to, and they've done the, very nice wooden kind of carved sign to make it look old and fancy, but it's sort of noticeable that it's new. It's and their symbol there is, I think I'm gonna go with, they have a tree that has this big spreading, so Mattingly is written and the tree is on the sign above it, and kind of dripping off of the branches, you can see where they have placed like the names of prominent businesses. So it's like Nouveau, and it's tacky is the thing you note about it.
There are probably 3 sister cities listed below the sign, like one in Japan and one in Poland, those kinds of things. Yeah, and the place feels a little tawdry as you are driving in through here. Let me ask you, David, this crucible, what area of the city do you find yourself driving in? Is it a downscale? Is it upscale? Is it like geographically separated, like it's on a bluff? Is it down by the seashore? What area do we find ourselves in?
Ooh, okay. I feel like the first thing that came to my mind is like the real like downscale. It's like, oh, everything across from the railroad tracks just kind of was excised, maybe from their own thoughts and from the thoughts of the other people. Like, we don't even like those people.
So
So
we're
these are all the
definitely,
like the lower class people.
yeah, there's definitely a bad side of the tracks vibe that you get as you're heading over here. Like this is the place where none of the potholes have been fixed. You know, and when you go over the railroad tracks, there's that dunk, 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 that even the high-end lemos shocks can't quite handle. There's a lot of places where there's fencing and, you know, cars and trailers behind the fencing, and you know, this is the place where Dollar Generals go to die. So when you kind of take a turn and see what the address that you've been given for the Crucible, Thomas, what is the fence that stands around this place? What is that? Is it barbed wire? Is it you know, orange strips through the chain link fence, or is it wrought iron, or is it something even weirder?
I think maybe it's like you know, that chain link with like a plastic backing that's often used around construction sites, that kind of thing. Like maybe there's no active construction going on, but like those fences still seem to be there.
Yeah, and you'll see like the wind catches it, and it's like a wave as the wind catches and billows out the plastic that's behind it. There are some gaps and things on it. Certainly, like a lot of wind kind of cuts through here and does that. But when you turn your glance above to what you can see past the fence, Patrick, what is the incongruous structure that you see behind that fence that by all rights should not be there in this area behind this kind of fence?
I think it's I think it's like a multi-story, like 10 or more stories tall log cabin, which just doesn't seem like it should do, but it's there, proudly doing.
Yeah, it is a high towering. It's like someone made a decent sized office building and faced it with the log cabin sort of outline on it, you know, with the cut in windows and so on, and it is very strange looking. The thing that will probably strike you too, as you kind of are kind of stopped and you're looking at it, you'll definitely see like animals on the outside of it, like birds' nests and things like that in the cracks and stuff. And it like it has its own little ecosystem. And your driver will come up and bring you to a stop.
Lowell, I'd like to, as we've been driving, I've been kind of sitting there, the music Thomas, what sort of music are we listening to?
Good question.
We've absolutely got some just pure instrumental symphonic stuff happening right now. It's yeah. I'm imagining someone turned on something as we got into the car, and I was just like, like it just was you know, like nails on the chalkboard to me. So I quickly changed it to something like that. That's very calm and sedate and rich.
And I've been sitting there with my deck of cards and like running cards through my fingers and been kind of unusually quiet for me. And I've been thinking, Lowell.
Mm-hmm.
If we had someone come back from this place who had firsthand knowledge, but they did not bring them to us to tell us anything, I'm wondering if I could have an epiphany and ask you, what happened to the person who came back?
Well, let's have you roll with dynamic.
Alrighty. Do we have a room?
Oh, I don't. Let me make up a room. A fresh room that will betray us.
It shall. I know it will.
And that. New room. A naturally noble seal.
Oh, that has to be good.
I will capture that.
We're seaside. It would make sense.
I'll drop it on the basics move page.
All right.
Paste. Oh, it's right at the top. There you go. Top of page, column E.
Column E. Yes. There you are. Oh.
You know, seals, they're just made to be noble.
They are. They're so cute. All right. So 2 dice, and I'm +1 on this. And I am, there is the hint of my magic involved because I'm looking at probability on this, but that's probably not affecting the roll. So, submit. Oh, I did not roll well, Lola. I got a 5.
So you will sit and think on that and kind of concentrate. The good news is, I think that this is a game where you get to mark XP on a miss.
I believe we do fail up.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
1 step more towards world conquering.
Exactly. I think that you're trying to imagine what that kind of situation would be.
Why didn't they send?
When you see that across the street, you guys have parked and maybe kind of, stopped and kind of stepped out. See that thing where you look and it's that van across the street, the white panel murder van that you get a bad feeling about. It's just parked there. It's a pretty new van, kind of sticks out a little bit here in this neighborhood.
We say judgily from our limousine.
Yeah.
It seemed that there are already spies. Look, right there.
Points at this van.
Like air conditioner repair people?
There's no air conditioners here. That must be one of the enemy.
Normally I would disagree, but it is a log cabin, so the thought of central air does seem a little off.
Very anachronistic.
It's certainly across the street and off, across the fence, but it doesn't look like there's any businesses around here that it would be servicing. Might be just a delivery van. Unmarked, plain, unoccupied. What do you want to do, Clay?
I think he said
he's just away for a second. Of course, it always happens. What do you want to do, Thomas?
I think so. Are we still in the limo? Have we gotten out at this point?
I imagine that Malachi has kind of stepped out to kind of look around and tune to the area, but you might not have yet.
I think I may have if that had already happened. I think I will. I've kind of heard this exchange happening, and I'm just like peeking over at this van. I think I'm going to kind of like under the guise of like, just checking out this fence a little further and kind of walking down. I'm just trying to put myself in a position where I can better see into the cab of that van, just kind of surreptitiously.
Yeah. So you'll make your way down to kind of get a look here. And we don't have a particular find something move beyond the habit epiphany. So are you trying to be sneaky about this, or are you being pretty obvious? Ask you that.
I'm definitely sneaky. I don't think Thomas is brazen enough to kind of just like, suspicious van, I'm going to walk up to it and peek in kind of thing. I think, he's a little more circumspect about it.
Why don't you do something shady, which is a primordial move?
Excellent. Let me see. My primordial is 0. Let's see. Oof. That is a 4.
Well, the good news is you get to mark XP.
Hooray.
Damn this die roller.
Yes. Also, would you please mark 1 point of storm? And I think as you move up, as you're getting closer, and trying to do this, you'll suddenly realize that you can hear this low, ultra low frequency tone. And as you kind of step closer, it kind of comes up, and it starts to hurt. And you kind of try to concentrate and look in the cab of this car, this vehicle, but you can't see into the back. There's definitely no one in the front cab of this, and it, like, the van feels wrong to you.
Yeah. Okay. I think Thomas immediately kind of recoils from that pain and is kind of like turns around and moves back towards the limousine in a bit more of a hurry than when he went over there. And I think by the time he gets back to people, he's kind of he's still breathing a little bit hard, and he's like, something's wrong. That van, the intensity of the vibration I got there, it hurts. It's not right. You were right. There's something wrong with this. I couldn't tell what, but it's not right.
Silas, what's your take on this?
I think
We haven't gotten a
Silas.
fail from you, so let's move to you.
I'm the next in line. I think Silas, by this point, he's also climbed out of the limo and actually climbed up on top of it to sort of get a higher perch to see above the fence a little bit better.
Okay.
He's been like pulling string between his fingers and peering through it at the building in sort of different angles and like making notes on a paper.
So let me ask you this then. You get up, you get above the fence line, you stand there, and you can see the grounds. What is on the grounds that is incongruous both to the fence and to this 10-story log cabin?
Like perfectly acid green astroturf.
Yeah. Right out. It just a luxuriant, verdant, bright green coating of that. There's some spots where it's missing. You're not sure if that's a pattern or not, but it goes as far as you can see on the inside of this.
Huh. Does
What do you
anybody
do?
know if, like, can astroturf go patchy? Do you have to fertilize it?
No, you really shouldn't have to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Thomas. You were saying something about a van?
The van grass van what? Like I think I'm still a little shaken up from that the encounter with the van at the moment, and I'm like peeking. I'm like looking over at the grass, and I'm like, are you asking about the patchy grass? Is that what? Like I think I'm just so like I'm out of it to the point where I'm kind of like maybe even starting to put my hands over my ears just a little bit.
Hey, Thomas, oh, hey, you doing okay there? It's here. Take a look at me.
I think I kind of maybe out of my pocket pull out a little thing of like just a couple little foam earplugs, and I put those in because you can still talk, with those things in, and I kind of put them in, and I'm like, okay, sorry, what was the question? I'm okay.
You said something about an angry, bad-sounding van. That sounded not good, and then you started mumbling about grass and earplugs, so it wasn't great.
Well, yeah, I'm a little confused that there's something we need to look out for that van, no question. Malachi was right about that. As I got closer, the sound was so intense. It was the vibration. It was not right. It was discordant. It didn't fit.
So we leave the van alone. We're not here for vans. We're here for strange buildings.
With AstroTurf?
Let me come to Clay. Clay, some of them gotten out of the car. They've identified this van, this white panel van across the street and down a little ways, as unusual. And Silas is standing on top of the limo. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I think maybe Clay has his now his legs like on the like the pavement, like still sitting down, but like almost out. And I don't know if there was, but I'm just assuming there's like champagne. He's like drinking a champagne flute from this limo. It's like, all right, can everyone just calm down a little bit? Like, we're just trying to get to the Crucible. I don't know what's happening here. I don't like this football grass. I don't like this Lincoln Log monstrosity, but can we just get to the center of where we're looking at before we jump on cars and things?
I was just trying to get a better angle above the fence.
I know, honey, but let's just drive to the center of it before we actually start getting crazy.
Thomas looks at you and kind of points towards an area in the fence where, like, how sometimes with these construction fences, they're not like, it's chain link, but there's like two posts and it's like not joined together. You could easily pull one edge out. And I think I point towards that and I'm like, be my guest. You can go first.
And Clayton just kind of gestures to the limo. She's like, oh, I guess we're done with this. Our chariot is broken. We gotta hoof it from here. All right.
It's
I think just like takes
just
the rest
across
of
the street. It's right there.
Yeah, and of course, Clay just makes like an eye roll at that and just drinks the rest of the champagne. And she's like, all right, well, of course, and just leads the way.
Okay. You start heading over to that gap in the fence. Malachi, do you follow? This van just back behind you.
Yeah, there's no way we can leave an enemy like that just lurking behind us.
Absolutely.
So as they're looking towards the fence, I'm going to begin moving back towards the van.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm sneaking. I think
You're moving up to it. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go straight up to the driver's side door.
Okay.
And kind of look in.
As I said, there's no driver or passenger in those front seats. And the van is set up such that you can't actually see. It's got that sort of barrier there. You can't see into the back.
And I'm going to move on around to the rear of the van. And,
those are some tinted windows, huh?
yeah, I would imagine they are, yes. And I'm going to reach into my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to pull out, I have a multi-tool. I found those to be extraordinarily useful over my many years.
Sure.
And bringing out the very smallest of the little multi-tool prongs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to jam it straight into the lock and go wiggle, 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 wiggle. And
absolutely. Now, normally I would have you make the magic roll,
Yeah.
but something else is going to happen.
Oh, well, that's great.
Could I please have you roll dynamic?
Oh, alrighty. It's my good one. I got an 8.
You got an 8. So when you go and you touch the van, it falls out of the world. Like it falls away into the ground with a sudden pull. And there is almost like this feeling of a sucking abyss that starts to pull at you as this van drops down in dimensions and vanishes out of the world. You get away. Do you cause a big scene, lose something, or does the storm gather?
Well, I'm tempted by causing a big scene, but I think I'll have the storm gather.
Okay, so you'll feel that the sort of weird torrent of energies. Nothing you did. You didn't create that, and you know, there's no one around here that saw it. There's no paradox, but it's just gone.
So I do add 1 to storm, correct?
No, because your pick was
storm gathers.
Oh yes. So yes, add 1 to storm. Sorry.
Yes. Okay.
And that van is just vanished. No pun intended.
I'll look back at everyone. Look back where the van was. Look back at everyone. I told
Lovely.
you that it was there. Something is wrong.
Look, everybody, Malachi got rid of the evil van. We can go in now.
What did you do with the van?
I didn't do anything with the van. The van disappeared. Something is wrong here.
Good job. I thought that's what we were trying to get rid of the van, right?
I
You
was
didn't
trying
like the van?
I
It made very bad noises at Thomas. He was angry at it.
Thomas walks back over to that area. Do I still experience that sound and or not?
No, it's gone.
So I walk over there and then I walk over and I kind of stand there for a second and I take out my earplugs and I just turn to everyone else and I shrug.
This is a bad sign.
I think Clay just dramatically shrugs and just like, well, that's, I guess, one other thing we don't have to worry about now if everyone is stressed out about that, and just kind of keeps walking. Although I think anyone that's close to Clay so far realizes like, oh, he is definitely putting on a show. He's a little freaked out about that.
Yeah. Clay, you're still the first person to get to that fence. Do you go through?
Yeah, I think he stops there and waits for everyone to catch up. Just like, well, I suppose it's time to go, right? And if no one stops him, he will very purposely, bravely walk into this fence. Is it like, there's nothing to worry about, right? Just walk through.
I think it's not until Clay is like starting to pull the fencing apart that Silas, still on top of the limousine, is like, oh, shit, oh, we're doing this now? Oh, and it starts like scrambling down and rushing across the street to try and catch up with y'all.
Perfect.
And this seems like the perfect place for us to stop. At the fence.
Oh, you monster. Great.
I am. I'm a terrible monster.
Yeah.
But we'll start with you next time. Let me hand everybody, I don't know what the XP system is yet, but let's hand everybody 3 XP on top of whatever you got for your terrible rolls. And we'll start out here next time. A couple of things I want to say before we wrap. I usually do Stars and Wishes every other session, so we'll do Stars and Wishes next session after we had a chance to actually play a little bit more. If between now and next time you're like, I looked at this and I want to do this thing instead, feel free to make those changes. So don't feel like you are married to any of the choices that you've made today. You can swap those around. Does that sound cool with everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Then I'm going to stop the recording.